Hey, this is Dr. Priscilla. I just wanted to make a quick tutorial for you that may be beneficial. It is about creating the correct information when you're talking about the prompt. So let me see if I can share the screen here. Now, this is the one that we've been working on for a while. We're describing an interesting neighbor and the things that we should say. The first thing that I did, and we've already talked about that, is created what you see in green, just answering the basic prompts. We just answered the basic prompts. So here we say, who is the person? The person I want to describe is my neighbor, John. Okay? How you know this person? This tells me that John and I go way back. We have lived in the same neighborhood for 5 years. This is how you know John. The next thing that we're asked is what this person likes to do. And we know that my neighbor John enjoys talking about airplanes. This is what he likes to do. John likes to talk about airplanes. Then explain why you think this neighbor is interesting. My neighbor John is interesting because he likes airplanes too. One day I was on the same plane as John and we talked a long time during the entire flight about airplanes. Okay, that is sufficient. And remember, when I did this, I completed it in 1 minute and 2 seconds. Okay, so you have more than enough time to answer the question. Let's see, what am I going to do here? I'm just trying to sort it out for you so that you can see it a little better. When we look at our PAT, I want you to just think, we're thinking about words that we can use with our neighbor. These are our phrasal verbs. They're usually 2 words, and we can go with, I'm going to go with hang out, talk about, and move around. Okay, those are the 3 phrasal verbs that I'm going to use. For my academic vocabulary, I'm going to, because this applies to most people, wonderful, engaging, fabulous, and fantastic. These are easy 3-syllable words to use to describe a person, because that's what we're describing. We're describing a person, and that person is your neighbor. And the next thing is the transitional phrases. And these transitional phrases are always good everywhere. And they're going to be, however, for this reason, overall, first, second, and in addition. Okay, so those are easy. The transitional phrases are going to be easy. And I think your academic vocabulary is going to be fairly easy. Where your challenge is, it's going to be in your phrasal verbs. That's where I think your challenge is going to be. So be sure to look up some phrasal verbs online so that you can become familiar with them. Now you're going to describe an interesting neighbor. You should say who this person is. The person I want to describe is my wonderful, let's put in wonderful. That's 3 syllables. So we can put in wonderful is my wonderful neighbor, John. How do you know this person? John and I go way back. You will get credit because you're using the collocation of go way back, which was in the material that we studied earlier. John and I go way back. We have lived in the same neighborhood. Neighborhood is 3 syllables. So there you are. You're good there. We have lived in the same neighborhood for 5 years. And you could say we have lived in the same fantastic neighborhood. You can also put this here, fantastic. Fantastic. Fantastic neighborhood for 5 years. What this person likes to do. John enjoys talking about airplanes. So let's go with John enjoys engaging conversation about airplanes. So we see now we're taking out the word talking and putting in 2 3-syllable words, which is engaging conversation. Now, explain why you think this neighbor is interesting. My neighbor John is interesting, and I thought we could use interesting, but interesting is in the prompt. My neighbor John is interesting because he likes airplanes too. One day, let's put in, I remember one day, here is your 3-syllable word. I remember one day I was on the same plane as John, and we talked about, this is your phrasal verb. This is your phrasal verb here. And we talked about, let's make this purple or a different color than red. We talked about there. We talked about airplanes for a long time. Okay. For a long time. Oh, I'd say, no, we talked about airplanes. We talked about airplanes during, so let's take that out. We talked about airplanes during the entire flight, since we already got that there. We talked about airplanes during the entire flight. We talked about airplanes during the entire flight. And of course, we'll take this one out. You don't have to talk for 2 minutes, but you do need to talk for a full 1 minute. Let me time myself now and see how long I actually talk. Okay, the prompt is describe an interesting neighbor, and you should say who the person is, etc. I will start now. The person I want to describe is my wonderful neighbor, John. John and I go way back. We have lived in the same fantastic neighborhood for 5 years. John enjoys engaging conversation, talking about airplanes. My neighbor John is interesting because he likes airplanes too. I remember one day I was on the same plane as John, and we talked about airplanes during the entire flight. Okay, well, that was only 50 seconds, but I hope that you get the idea. We do need to add a little more information, and we'll talk more next time on tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.